and welcome. My name is Sunil Yashkalra and this is a brand new show that you're watching on NewsX, the Footcast Social. Through this broadcast, we intend to bring you the biggest voices and the analysis from the world of football to help you to take their perspective and interact with them. Our first special guest is known as the voice of football, Peter Drury. Welcome, Peter, to the show. Peter, if football is the Vatican, you are the Pope. Welcome from the Indian sports fans to this special show.
Thank you so much. The pleasure and the privilege is all mine. I'm very flattered by that very kind introduction. I hope I can live up to it. Thank you.
Peter, what is it that drove you into football? Because if you look back, you've done a little bit of cricket. Just share your experiences with the fans.
I've done only a very little bit of cricket. And cricket is a game I love, and I know how huge it is in your country. But cricket, of course, is a game which very largely is commentated on by former professional players. You almost have to have been captain of your country before you can progress. And let me tell you, if you ever saw me play cricket, you'd realise why I couldn't commentate on that. But football, of course, is the big national sport here, much as we love our cricket in our summertime as well. And like millions and millions of others, I grew up enjoying it on the television and the radio. Again, I'm certainly not an elite sportsman in any sense. And so it was never likely that I was going to pursue a career playing it. And I guess the next best thing is talking about it.
An interesting question from the fans. When you pick up the mic, are you a critic? Are you a philosopher? Are you a fan or a commentator?
I think just a commentator. The job of a commentator is only to articulate the event in front of him or her. And nothing more, nothing less than that, really. I certainly don't think I'm a critic because in my view, only in my view, there are commentators who would disagree with this. It's not my job to have an opinion. My opinion is not important at all. The person who has an opinion is the former player or the manager who sits next to me and who has been involved in professional football and actually done it. Their opinion is what matters. My job is simply to hopefully find the words to describe the events and the emotions around them.
We move on to another interesting question, the Qatar World Cup. If England makes it in the final by winning the semi-final, how will that moment feel for you?
Well, let me say that, of course, in Russia, this nearly happened.
Yes.
England were leading in a World Cup semi-final, and I guess at halftime in that game, I was beginning to think, gosh, what am I going to say here? This fantasy is on the point of coming true, and sadly, of course, it didn't come true. So. Again, without wanting to be a killjoy, because I understand the excitement and the nature of the question, the truth about commentating is that it needs to be in the moment. And the moment the final whistle goes, if England have won the semi-final 5-0, by then I've been in celebratory mode for half an hour already. But if they've scored in the 93rd minute to go through, I guess we're in a different gear altogether. Either way, what I would say also is that I have to remember my neutrality.
Yes.
So I hope that when Croatia beat England in that semi-final in 2018, I was every bit as excited for them as I would have been for England. And one of many reasons, apart from a lack of talent, why I could never be a professional sportsman, is that I spent too much of my time feeling sorry for the loser. And the great sports people can't do that. And so I would certainly afford a few words to the gallant losers, because there's nothing worse than losing a semi-final, I don't think. Nobody remembers the team that lost the semi-final. But I hope without being too jingoistic and over-patriotic, I could summon some words that indicated somewhere between the lines my pride in my Englishness and my appetite for a World Cup final, including my nation.
Yes.
England, of course, lives off 1966, and I was born in 1967. So it's a frustrating near miss.
You feel for Gareth Southgate, the manager of the England football team. Just describe his stint in the current English team.
I certainly have a great fondness, as many who've come across him do, for Gareth Southgate, because he's a really smashing human being. You know, he understands people, he empathises with people, and that's why he's done so well as the England manager, chiefly, in my opinion, because he has managed to mould young people into a way of thinking which has taken away their inhibitions and has enabled them to grow and feel a pride and disregard the fear that has sometimes come with playing football for England and the pressure, and just enabled them to express themselves. So, yes, when they lost that semi-final, indeed when they lost the European Championship final, I felt immense sympathy for him. I wouldn't want to play up too much the extent of my own relationship with him. I am one of many who's been fortunate enough to cross paths with him, and once in a while I do communicate with him. And when I do, I remind him what a privilege it is for him, how great it is for him to be the manager of England. That is a truly privileged position. And the thing is that he's so very aware of that. I sometimes think that perhaps I go on about it too much, because it's also a very pressured position. And he deals with that pressure remarkably well.
Gareth comes across as a brilliant human being. Last time I encountered him at the World Cup final at Lord's, and guess what? He shook hands with all possible fans, took pictures, and gave a little pat on the back. How would you describe him as a human being?
Of course, that is exactly my point. The thing that makes Gareth such an attractive England manager in the broadest sense of the word is his humanity. He understands it. Partly, I think, because of what he has been through.
Yes,
for a start. Well, exactly. Even before that, he had a very normal family upbringing. He has a life which has shaped him. He was a very, very good professional footballer, and very good. He earned many, many caps for England, but he wasn't a superstar. He wasn't a rock star footballer. He was just a normal guy who did very, very well and maximised his talent. And of course, he had that terrible, jarring moment as a young man when he missed that penalty at Wembley. And what was presumably the lowest point of his life has, in a very beautiful way, sort of underpinned the great man he now is, because he can empathise with everything. And when England players missed their penalties for him this summer, he understood that better than anybody could understand that. And he becomes a sort of father figure for them. You know what, when you're in that sort of position, I'm sure it's the same being the captain of the Indian cricket team or whatever. Yes. You're asked questions not just about cricket or football. You're asked questions about all of the issues in the world. Right. And you're expected to come up with some sort of acceptable position, some sort of broad understanding of complex issues which have nothing at all to do with your job. And he has the intelligence to deal with all of this.
You spoke about Manchester United's great following in India. They have just put some money for the IPL team. Do you think it's great for the Manchester United brand and the fans that are present in India?
I would say it is, yes. I think it's really exciting. I feel, I suppose because I do love my cricket, I feel a little bit humble about the English Premier League imposing itself on your cricket-loving nation. But I like to think that that's not the case, and you're choosing to engage with our league, which is absolutely fantastic. And I do know that India is full of football fans. What I think would be lovely would be, given the size of your nation, and goodness knows I should know, but I can't tell you off the top of my head what the population is. But what I would love is for your huge nation to become competitive internationally at football. To grow your own clubs in a way that enables you to attract top talent and to produce top talent, and so that we could reach a World Cup one day, and India aren't just in it, but really competing in it. And listen, I know that's a long journey. I appreciate that's a long journey. But to get back to your question, if Manchester United and other great clubs begin to invest in football in India, then I would suggest to you that that is a great starting point.
Peter, you've been a part of the media since the radio days and evolved through the print, television, and now social media. We know that your son is not a fan of yours for not having a Wikipedia page or your views on social media. What do you have to say about that?
I find this an awkward conversation about social media because I don't like social media. I'm not on it, but I have to understand that it's a big part of the world now.
Yes.
So there it is. I mean, in a way, that's it. And the reason I don't sort of pursue the conversation willingly is because if I do, it sounds as though I believe I'm right and everybody else is wrong. And that is the height of arrogance. I don't believe that. I just find that my own life is happier, more contented when it is private. I do my work, I go home, and I don't spend hours after a game staring at my phone, responding to reaction to the game, to me, to whatever. I'm not sure, in all truth, that social media has improved the national or the international discourse on football or anything else. But again, I don't really want to go on about that because a lot of people really enjoy it. So go ahead, enjoy it. I mean, that's fine. That's fine. And all I would say is it's not compulsory. You know, it's my choice. I think also a lot of it is driven by I don't know whether you're familiar with the expression FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, FOMO.
Yeah, FOMO. So people are frightened not to be the first to know and not to be part of the conversation. I'm very comfortable not being the first to know. I'll find out eventually, and that'll do for me. So that's where I'm at on it. I'm probably a bit of a dinosaur, but
yes,
I'm happy being a dinosaur.
Peter, viewers want to know there's a lot of hard work that goes behind a big title clash or a Manchester derby. Just take us through your entire preparation before a big title clash.
Yes, it does vary because actually Liverpool against Manchester United, funnily enough, is obviously a game between the two best known clubs around the world. And so they're sort of best known to me as well. There's only so much information that I can pass on about those that everybody doesn't already know. On average, I always say that a match takes 8 hours to prepare. So basically a full working day. It can be a little bit less than that. It can be a little bit more than that. And that is broken down, of course, into all of the very basic statistical work, information on every player, information on the background of the game, the history of the game, who won last time, all of that sort of very basic stuff. And then, yes, I give some thought to the words I'm going to use descriptively up until the moment the whistle blows. What I think every commentator has to avoid is the mistake of attempting to script what he might preconceive as a likely moment. So I know that at Old Trafford, the teams are going to line up in the tunnel. They're going to walk out. There's going to be a big cheer. They're going to walk along that touchline. They're going to line up. And so it's quite easy to prepare some sort of form of words for that, as long as I'm ready to react if those things don't work in quite the same way. But it would be foolish ever to try and suggest to myself that I know exactly how a moment is going to play out during the game, because it won't play out like that.
Peter, you've said that 1 hour before the match is very crucial. You look at the hair, you look at their sleeves, you look at the color of the shoes. Despite such dexterity, you still admittedly said that you make few mistakes. Are you kinder to yourself now?
I'm kinder to myself than I used to be, because experience shows me that it's inevitable. And there really is no point worrying about it. And sometimes you're a long, long way from the pitch and you say one name and you find out 5 seconds later it was another name. Of course, a really bad day at work is the day when you shout the name over a goal and identify.
And you get it wrong.
And you get it wrong. That's a horrible moment, and hopefully it doesn't happen too often, but very occasionally it does. And that's the sort of the worst day at work. But there really is no point worrying about it. If you look at the best footballers in the world, over a 90-minute game, you know, Messi will do something brilliant and score a hat-trick.
Right.
But one or two passes won't reach their destination. You know, he will make a mistake or two mistakes in a game. Everybody makes a mistake. If you open the batting for India and first day of the test match, especially in England, where the ball's nibbling about a bit and moving away, you're going to play and miss 3 or 4 times.
Absolutely.
And on a bad day, you'll nick one and you'll be out for naught. On a good day, you'll get away with 3 or 4 of them and you'll go on and make 100. And it's sort of like that.
So in a way, you say that you are kinder to yourself. Still, you don't cry on the Coronation Street episodes.
Well, I'm kinder to myself in that I let myself if I make a mistake. But I'm still soppy. Don't worry about that. I still cry at plenty.
What is the advice you would give to a sporting commentator who hasn't been a professional player? Because that tribe is shrinking fast. What is the scope for a wordsmith in today's day and age?
Well, I hope so. I hope so, because I've admitted to being a dinosaur, but that's sort of how I was brought up when I was working for BBC Radio many years ago. Words were important, tone of voice was important, sort of broadcasting, if you like, broadcasting poise is important. What I would say to young people who want to do it now is just be true to yourself. Don't pretend to be something that you're not. Speak the way you speak. The way I do it isn't necessarily the right way to do it. It's just the way I do it. And there are plenty of terrific commentators out there who probably listen to me and think that's not the way I want to do it. There's another way of doing it. And of course there is. And that's why these things split opinion so much. What the mistake would be to try and imitate someone, to try and be someone that isn't true to you. So, I think that there are 2 tests if you really want to go into what is a very competitive business. One is, am I being true to myself? Am I really doing it the way that is natural? Not necessarily the best, but the way that is natural. And 2, do I really love it? Do I really love the game? Or am I doing this in some sense to be well known or to make a mark? Do it because you love the game and because you love the words as well. Because insofar as you do become well known, I'm here to tell you that is the least attractive bit. There's no particular joy in fame or notoriety or D-list fame or whatever it is you get being a commentator. It's that in itself is something that if I could take it all away, I would. And if I could do the job, be at a football match, talking to myself and nobody else listening, doing the same thing, I would be just as happy.
Any conversation in India is incomplete without Sachin Tendulkar, Mahendra Singh Dhoni or the Cricket World Cup. In your words, how would you describe Sachin bidding adieu at the 1K or Mahendra Singh Dhoni hitting that 6 or the World Cup final?
Wow. Well, I had the great privilege of meeting Sachin when he came to play for Yorkshire.
Lovely. Memories.
I was there aren't many, but I just remember his extraordinary, as a very young man, by the way, coming to a foreign country, his extraordinary poise, but incredible humility, given the talent he had. And I remember having the privilege of watching him bat a couple of times and thinking, wow. I mean, wow, just to have the talent he's got in his little finger would, be enough to fill my whole frame. To see that the elegance of him with a bat in his hand. I mean, just a beautiful, beautiful sportsman. And insofar as, I mean, I wouldn't want to play it up. I met him very briefly in a journalistic sense a couple of times, but he came over as such a terrific human being as well. And so whenever I see him on the television now, commentating or whatever, I think back to that very brief time and think, wow, what a career he had. And if I had been there for his farewell, I don't know what I'd have done. There might well have been a tear in my eye because, you know, the world only produces so many absolute greats. And he was certainly one of them.
Brilliant. And about Mahendra Singh Dhoni hitting that six and winning India?
Well, India, listen, the words for that, I wouldn't want to occupy the space of the great cricket commentators. For me, one of the greatest pieces of commentary recently, and of course this is very biased, was from a New Zealander, Ian Smith, when England won the World Cup in that incredible final against New Zealand. And he gave an absolute masterclass in commentary as his country was losing in this remarkable conclusion to the game. And his words, England have won it by the barest of margins. Yes. Absolutely. And it was the barest of margins. I mean, how many loopholes and so on do we have to go through for England to win that game? And so he described that brilliantly well. And I only hope that I was particularly if Dhoni hits this six at England's expense and wins the World Cup, I have to dig deep within myself to produce the same joy on behalf of India. And I sincerely hope I would.
You've idolized the great Peter Jones. His moment was when he said, "And the sun shines now." Are these the greatest words spoken behind the mic?
Yes, well, those words were not as part of a match commentary. Those words were in a report afterwards on the awful day of the Hillsborough disaster here, which remains one of the most hideous and horrendous events around the sporting event in our nation's history. And so I wouldn't want for one moment to use this conversation to remember that day because of a piece of broadcasting brilliance. It was an awful day in many people's families, but Peter Jones was faced as a sports broadcaster with the job of articulating this news. And he produced that day on BBC Radio's flagship programme, Sports Report, a piece of reportage which, for me, remains second to none. And he concludes it with, "And the sun still shines." And that's so simple and so poignant. And again, you know, that if you just stop and think about it, if you listen to it back, it can really
aches your heart.
It really aches your heart, exactly, yeah.
Well, moving on to our last question of the day. Peter, your words describing Ronaldo at the Newcastle game when he returned at the Old Trafford. A fan says they were the greatest lines ever spoken. He says, "If I were to die, ask Peter to announce." Can Peter repeat those words for an Indian fan?
Oh, gosh. Well, I would if I could remember them. That's my problem. I can't remember what I said that day. I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry to disappoint. I'm very flattered that he's so kind about the words I used. But the funny thing about these things is that I guess, again, it's maybe a result of the fact that I don't use social media. Once I've said those words, they've gone in my mind. But it was a lovely moment. It was a lovely moment, and it was a lovely example for me of a set piece, if you like, because I knew that there were going to be 25, 30 seconds of a camera right in Ronaldo's face as he walked out at Old Trafford, and that it was simply a case of hopefully finding the right things to say about him. It was a great moment of theatre. And, you know, all sport is, cricket, football, anything else, any of the great sports, all they are theatre. You know, they are unscripted theatre. And the reason we love them is because there is jeopardy, and it is jeopardy that involves human beings trying their hardest. There are two teams trying to win. There are lots of great individuals. There's a narrative, there's an outcome. And that's why we keep going back to it.
Now let's go to our fans from across the world to ask you a few questions.
You have given us the best moments. You called Messi a slippery eel once. How would you describe Ronaldo on those lines?
Well, that's a very tough one. Slippery eel actually was a description used many years ago in the 1986 World Cup of Diego Maradona by a great BBC radio broadcaster, Brian Butler. And so I guess that one was slightly borrowed if and when I used it. But as for Cristiano Ronaldo, I guess he's a different human being altogether, isn't he? And I don't know. He's more of a lion, isn't he?
Hello, I'm Saurabh. My question is related to the two GOATs in world football, Ronaldo and Messi. You've spoken about them on countless occasions. Before they hang up their boots, if they were ever to play for the same team, how would you describe the moment when the game kicks off?
Oh, I say. Well, here we are. The best meets the best. The cream meets the cream. The king and the king. It's something along those lines, I guess. I'd have to give that some deep thought. The thought of those two playing in the same team together, I think is so lip-smackingly exciting that we almost couldn't bear it if it happened. Right. But it would be a wonderful moment, but almost a fantasy moment. I think one of those things that it's almost better to dream about than to actually come true.
Hello, I'm Keyur. My question would be, in the past you have spoken about a former player from Manchester United who has now gone on to become their manager. Recent results have shown that he is getting quite a bit of stick from the fans, and rightly so. How do you see that panning out? What do you think is the future there? And maybe you know why I relate and why I ask. Thank you, sir. An honor to ask you a question. Thank you.
Well, there's no question he's coming under tremendous pressure. I mean, that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
Yes.
He is under tremendous pressure. Manchester United have lost successive Premier League home games horribly to Liverpool.
Yes.
And pretty horribly to Manchester City as well. And of course, not just that. And Manchester United, as you know, because it's implied in this conversation, they are the biggest club around the world. Absolutely. In India, I dare say there are more Manchester United supporters than supporters of any other English Premier League club. And I'm sure that's true all over Asia, Africa, Australasia, and so on, and America and England, by the way. If they are underachieving, the manager of Manchester United is under vast pressure. Absolutely. And I don't know Ole Solskjaer personally, but I do know plenty of people who do, and he too is just a good human being. He's just a good man, trying hard, and at the moment it's not happening for him, and the scrutiny that follows that is extraordinary.
Hi, my question is that you were there at Ronaldo 1.0. You gave us an iconic memory at Newcastle. What brought that?
His is an extraordinary narrative, and his is an amazing career. His devotion to his career goes beyond, I think, the understanding of most. Here he is now into his late 30s with the body, frankly, the body of a man who has been utterly uncompromising in treating himself like a Rolls Royce, like a luxury car. Wow. He has refused to poison himself. He won't have a drink. He won't eat too much. He will eat exactly what he has to eat. He will use premium fuel for the engine inside of him, and he will not overindulge. And he's therefore created a machine for the ages, which will drive for hundreds of thousands of miles further than anybody else's. I guess the biggest challenge for him is going to be the moment when he realizes maybe even his great machine can't keep going on forever. And I know that's a challenging moment for all elite sports people. But it does make me laugh when people are prepared to blame him and his return for Manchester United's current awkward predicament, I'd be more inclined to ask where would they be without him. You know, he keekeeps scoring these last-minute goals and contributing in remarkable ways. There are still people who are prepared or who would appear to prefer to concentrate on his shortcomings. And yes, maybe there are some, but aren't they massively outweighed by the remarkable contributions he makes? And I'm always one who would prefer to see the good, and there's an awful lot of good.
Thank you very much, Peter, for answering all the fan questions. Well, keep watching Footcast Social. We'll bring in more special guests from around the world for our fans.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.